Hey everybody, Nick Kramer here from Driven Leads, and I'm really excited today because I've got a special guest with me, Chris Waters, today. Chris is a veteran in the industry in the real estate side. He's done a multitude of things. He's got a massive team, but he also has some new stuff that he's been building to not only help his team, but also to help the real estate industry. So I'm really excited about it because it really blends into what we do at Driven Leads and how we run things. So I'm going to bring him on right now, and we're going to dig into what he's doing, who he is, what he's about, and kick it off. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Man, veteran. It's crazy. I went to an open house this weekend in the neighborhood where my wife and I live. And this realtor was like, "You're Chris Waters?" We do a lot of advertising, radio, TV, billboards, all that kind of stuff. And she's like, "You look so much younger than I expected." And
Thanks.
one, I appreciate that. And it's cool. She was like, "Oh, you're Chris Waters." It's such a little ego bump. I was like,
Yep.
"Thank you for that." In front of my wife, make my wife realize maybe I'm a big deal.
Yep.
It's funny, you work all day and then you walk in the house with, like, kids and your family, and then you're like, "Man, I'm like a nobody," you know?
You're a tier.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Because some people think I'm special outside of the house.
Right.
Anyways, yeah, so I got licensed as a real estate agent right out of college, literally 20 years ago this year, and started off as a buyer's agent, and I realized pretty quickly there was like a proverbial ceiling, like
Hmm.
they like to say, "Oh, there's no ceiling, there's no commission ceiling." There actually is. There's only so many hours in the day, so many only leads. You can only talk to so many leads. You can only close so many deals. And so I noticed that pretty quickly. In 2010, started a brokerage, and I'm in Austin, Texas, in the backyard of Keller Williams, their HQ. And I guess just ignorance. Of like, oh, I'm going to go start a brokerage and compete in the backyard of the biggest brokerage, privately held brokerage in the world. And anyway, so the first year was a complete disaster. Like, disaster would be an understatement. I remember I recruited about 20 agents, and like I was still like hustling as an agent, like selling homes. Like I was, cranking out deals. I'm trying to help lead my agents. And I started the brokerage because I loved marketing and lead generation. And most people on here won't probably remember this, but Google AdWords launched in 2006.
Oh yeah.
And there were all these things you could do to lead gen, and some of them free, like Craigslist and stuff back then.
Oh
And so
gosh, it's a blast
yeah,
from the past right there. I remember that.
I was generating so many leads. So out of necessity, started recruiting agents. And anyways, I remember my accountant called me in the late spring of 2011. He's like, "Hey, great news. You don't owe any taxes." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I brought in a couple hundred grand in commissions. How do I know to owe any taxes?" And it was one of those things where it was like one of those epiphany moments where you're like, man, like I was in the trenches so deep all year. I wasn't really paying attention to the numbers. So I like, I was like, "Okay, how many houses did we end up selling and all that kind of stuff?" And I was like, "Okay." So in year one, we sold 98 homes, and it was me and one other guy that sold 80 of the 98. And the other 18 agents sold 18 homes. And I was generating over 1,000 leads a month.
And that's
So,
common. What you found out pretty quickly is that's common. Right?
you
There's
know, yeah. So I remember going up to that other agent. His name's Brad. And I said, "Brad, I'm going to burn all this down. How do you feel about dividing and conquering? You work on the buy side, like helping agents convert leads. I'll work on the listing side." And, it was less about agent count and it was more about agent productivity. And so, like, we really got into the weeds of like helping agents, scale up. And over the course of those next 2 years, we went from burning it down to netting $1 million after all expenses by 2013. And we didn't have a lot of agents. Like I think we had like 8 or 9, and we did 325 closings in 2013. So yeah, a lot of people said we scaled the team model faster than anybody else, and we did it profitably. And so, 2014, I had a cousin in Amarillo, Texas. Her name's Lori Horner. If anybody needs to, need to buy yourself in Amarillo, Texas, hit up Lori. And anyways, we basically like installed all of our systems into Lori's business in 2014, and she was a solo agent and was selling like 25 homes a year. And in her first year, she did her first year of like, kind of
running
using
your
our playbook.
systems.
She did just shy of 100 transactions in year one.
Wow.
Mm. So like we worked with Lori for like a couple years and she kept growing, she got up to like, God, like 20% market share in Amarillo again with a small team. Like less than 10 agents. Like, it was mind boggling for her to sell a couple hundred homes. At any given time, there's only, probably five or 600 listings active.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So I've been on the team building journey now for the past 16 years, and I love it, man. Just love it.
Yeah.
Love
So
helping agents produce at a really high level.
So that being in that part and then seeing how you could help others, did that get you kind of, I know you were an early investor in some other things, and brings us full circle into kind of the stuff you're doing now. The solutions that you've been a part of, obviously they solve the problem for you. I think that's important too. Like, not only, too often we have people that come into the real estate industry that are bringing solutions to the table, and they're trying to solve something that they don't understand. I think it's
Mhm.
important to look at some of these solutions that are out there that solve problems for your team, right? I think
Yeah.
that's probably pretty important, and you can use your team as a guinea pig, whether they like it or not. They're being guinea pigged more often than not on their stuff. But then you find something that works. What was the walk me through, like, the aha moment of what you're doing now, and how the systems that you've kind of introduce us to what you're doing in 2026.
Yeah. So after Lori's success, I was going to all these masterminds, and a lot of people were asking me of like what we were doing, what's the story, like how did we do it so fast? How did you replicate that in another market? I had some people say, "Oh, you got lucky the second time,"
Right.
and so we were like, "All right, let's see if we can do this again." And so we actually got licensed as a franchisor with the Federal Trade Commission, and went through that very lengthy process in 2016, 2017, because we felt really good about what we did with Lori. And so I met another guy. He actually saw me on a podcast, and his name's Desmond Graham. Desmond was an on-site sales rep, and he left his job to go start his own kind of teamerage, if you will. And so we give Des all the playbooks, and our our playbooks are in G Drive. We actually had to print them out for the Federal Trade Commission, and it's in a binder, and it's about 13 inches thick of paper. I mean, that's just how much is in there, right? And you do this in phases. Anyways, long story short, Des started this team merge, if you will, 2018, and he went from 0 to 110 closings in year 1 with only I think it was 3 or 4 people in that first 12 months. And then he grew to in subsequent years from 110 to 250 the following year to 350 plus closings in year 3. So he grew even faster than I did. A lot of people don't even know who Desmond Graham is. And so after Des grew, like, we were like, man, we're really onto something. And so we started helping a lot of other teams start, using our systems. But I wrote about in a book, and I'll happy to give this away to any of your listeners. So
Yeah.
I'll give a copy to the listeners for free. I'll give you a little. We have a landing page where people can go and get a copy of it for free.
Awesome. I'll
Um,
put that link in. This is going to be on YouTube. I'll put that link on the YouTube in the bio for sure.
yeah, yeah. I'll give them the digital copy for free. If you want us to, if you want the physical copy, just pay shipping, handling, and I'll pay to print the book. And I'll put I'll send you the link. So anyways, we wrote this book about our experience. It's kind of like a memoir between 2010 and 2013. We released the book like 8 years ago. And, we've sold like tens of thousands of copies of it at this point. I mean, you can go find it on Amazon. It's not as successful as Gary Keller's book, but it's it's our story. But in the book, I there's a key hire in the book we define that is vital to like scaling a team, to selling hundreds and hundreds of homes. And what we say in the book is to go from what we call the early climb stage to the awkward teenager stage, you have to have this one critical hire. And it's your first sales leader, because you as a team owner are going to run out of time in the day to like really do an effective job building the business and working in the business. And so your sales lead's job is, there to help you with recruiting, selection, training, leading, motivating. And so we started helping dozens of teams in a very intimate fashion where we were like on calls with their agents and like, just like really in the trenches. And every team across the US and Canada we worked with got stuck at this one pivotal piece. And it was their sales leads. They had a really difficult time finding their wingman to help them scale their team. And we had some groups that found people and had, they were the ones that went off and sold, 300, 400, 500 homes a year. But a lot of teams really struggled in finding that sales lead. And, um, you know, when you think about what makes a sales lead successful, what I used to preach is it's all about recruiting and selection. Like it's all about putting in place these really high barriers to make sure you're selecting the right people to join your team before you invest in lead gen and technology and all these things for them. And so that was a key pivotal piece. And then something happened last year, and it's probably been one of the biggest epiphanies of my career in the business. Something we constantly were like pushing these sales leaders on that we were working with was you got to go out in the field and shadow the agents so you know what they're saying. The team leads and the team owners would be like, dude, I don't have time to go spend 3 hours going with them on appointments. And I'm like, you have to. Like, how do you know they're actually saying what they should be saying based off all
Right.
the training you just gave them? And so we had it was like we had a really difficult time getting sales leaders to like go out in the field. Like they would do a great job training agents, team owners would do a great job training agents. The team leaders would, do these like call jams during the week where they like are like, Tony Robbins on stage getting their agents to make more calls, but they weren't out in the field. And we were recommending these like reporting dashboards to like show you like which agents are converting and all this stuff. But like the dashboards just observe. They tell
Right.
you there's a problem, but they don't really help you fix the problem. So last year, for my group, like down here in Texas, the group I own, we created this app that the agents use to record their in person meetings. And it's essentially like an AI note taker, but we attached a testing rubric to it and it comes up with a skills score based off how the agent did face to face. And it in real time, like immediately sends a report to the agent with like all of the AI notes, like, hey, here's what happened. By the way, here's all the things outstanding that you need to do now when you go back to the office. You can copy and paste all that stuff up to CRM. But at the bottom, it says like, hey, here's where you could be better. And this is what you should do next time. And so the agents get that report. And then the team owners get a separate report that gives the team owner all the information about the things they did well and the things they can improve on. And so this kind of call it conversational intelligence, was never possible until AI came around. For years and years, we've had these like rubrics, these scorecards, for
Yeah.
when agents are on the phone, when they're in person, but filling them out's really tough. So anyways, we built up this app. I mean, it also is like grading phone calls, but it's also grading the in-person appointments. And so we were watching our agents skill, like we get these emails with like their skills score and it ranks them like you got an A, you got a B, you got a C, you got a D, you got an F. And like, man, it was when I first started getting them, it was brutal. Like I heard a listing agent like was like going off the rails with profanity because the seller was like this very, the seller was kind of crazy. He was talking about gold and chemtrails and silver and he was cursing and so the agent thought it was cool if he's like goes off the rails and start cursing. And I'm like, man, you got to keep it professional.
Right.
And then something else that was kind of cool is like in this kind of conversational intelligence, like I heard this agent, like she's walking through the house and she goes in the upstairs and there's like this balcony and the balcony doesn't have any railing. And she's like, hey, this house isn't going to qualify for financing. And by the way, if we have any kids come in this house, like you don't want them falling off the second floor of the house. And then the guy's like, oh, I'll get that, I'll get that fixed. Yeah. So we can get financing. So that kind of in that moment created a to-do activity for her to make sure it gets followed up with, right? And then
Yep.
there's the legal ramifications of like, did you get the seller's disclosure notice fixed? Because like the brokerage doesn't want to get sued because, you obviously know of this, but did the seller put in the seller disclosure notice? And then the guy said like, hey, I fixed the roof and I fixed the foundation. She's like, okay, great. Can you give me the receipts and warranties and stuff? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'll get that to you. So it created all these to-do activities. Anyways, yeah, we launched this app. It's been like the benefits have been incredible. We increased our face-to-face conversion from 40% to 53%. So not crazy, but
Well, I
like
mean, you
43%.
might say it might not be crazy, but we're not talking 5 appointments a month. You're talking hundreds, right? So
Yeah, I mean, we're booking a couple hundred appointments a month.
right. So yeah, that's crazy numbers. That's
But
huge.
but what's wild is there's this formula, no matter how big your team is, there's this formula to double your revenue, and it's really simple. I'll tell you what the formula is. And the formula I found accidentally as a result of, like, getting all this intel on what agents were saying on the phone and in person. So our in-person face-to-face conversion went from 40 to 53%. And the number of leads it would took us to generate appointment, because now we're grading the calls too. Previously, it was 15 leads to generate one appointment. As over the course of 3 months, as we started finding all these, you know, roaches behind the walls of things that people were doing that they shouldn't be doing, we went from 15 leads to 10 leads to book an appointment. So if anybody's listening to this, go plug this into ChatGPT or go do the math yourself. If you can change these two numbers, so 40% face-to-face conversion to 53, and your number of leads to get an appointment from 15 to 10, if you can change those two numbers like I just described, your revenue literally doubles. Like we had one, I mean, and in my case, it's like we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. But it's like if you're a team listening to this and you do, call it 500 grand in revenue,
Right.
you fix these two things. These are two tiny little bumps, and you go from 500 grand in revenue to $1 million without spending any more on lead generation.
And that's the kicker, right? It's the not spending anymore. Like we have that conversation with a lot of our clients, like, what can we do to go from A to B? And, we talk about in the real estate industry, if you're doing lead generation inside Google Ads, let's say, it's 1%. So 1% is your convert to close. So 100 leads, one deal. We start talking about how do you get from 1% to 2%? It's that, right? It didn't cost you anymore. You just got better at what you were doing and got more efficient. And then also you're being able to multiply that. You can go from 2% to 3% by following up and letting that system tell you what are the better leads as well. And that's why when we were talking, I got so excited about your stuff, is because you're able to track everything. And I'm passionate about tracking data and tracking traffic and then being able to let our clients know what works and what doesn't. Your system does that and then trains them on how to be better at that. So instead of going from a 1% to 2% in our world, putting your system together and then bringing that data back to your traffic, internet traffic broker, so to speak, or your paid leads team, telling them this works, this doesn't, run it in this neighborhood, not this neighborhood. That's huge. Like you said, you're not spending any more money. You're just getting better at what you're doing. You're making the wheel more efficient. You're not reinventing it.
Yeah, like the amount we have learned from the, call it, conversational intelligence has helped us probably save, it'll probably help us save a couple 100 grand this year alone in lead gen. Because, like, for example, we tested this vendor that, generates seller leads, and it was, they were promised the moon
Hmm.
with these crazy social media campaigns. And so we turned it on, we started getting flooded with seller leads, and our agents started going on the appointments. And, like, when I kind of reflect back on the last, 15 years of, like, testing all these different systems, like, I typically, have to give something like 90 days. Like, when I start spending money, what I historically used to think was I need to wait 3 months.
Yep.
I give 3 months and then I'll know. So, anyways, we turned on this seller lead gen thing with this company, and I won't mention any names, but we got flooded with seller leads. Our agent started going on the appointments, and I started listening. The app we created, it aggregates all the stuff, right? Like what went good, what went bad, and you get to see it as a team owner and manager
Hmm.
from I'll call it a lead gen perspective. You'll start seeing these patterns where the agent's on the appointment and the seller says, like, "Oh, I have no interest in selling my house. I just wanted to get a free valuation of what
An
my home's
idea.
worth."
Right. Yeah.
And so our agents would go on, like, and I'm not saying it didn't work. Our agents in 30 days were averaging, they'd go on 10 appointments and win one deal. And the ROI for our business worked because the lead cost was so good. Like,
Right.
the lead cost was cheap. But it was like I was about to have a revolt of my entire team because
Right.
they're pissed. They're like, I went on 10 appointments. It took me 30 to 40 hours to prepare and to go on those appointments, and I got one. And so, we cut the lead, that vendor within 30 days, because we knew, like, it wasn't, this is not, it's good for the business, but, like, short term financially, but not good long term, because our team is all gonna, revolt and potentially
Right.
leaps.
Yeah, the burnout is so terrible that you're probably going to lose agents instead of gaining agents or making them happy at the end of the day, and that's where you make your money is having happy agents, right?
I've, the number one complaint I hear from team owners and from agents alike is they hate making calls, right? It's like, man, I used to be so guilty of this too. Oh my God. I used to say, man, agents are so lazy. They won't make calls. And something that's happened over the last 6 months is what I realized is agents don't hate making calls. They hate the psychological punishment of calling, 50 people and maybe getting one appointment.
Yeah.
And so anyways, something else that's been really exciting about what's happened over the past 6 months with the help of AI is we know exactly what is working and what's not really fast. And now the agents, when they make calls, like they're talking to engaged prospects that they don't have, that they don't feel like they're chasing.
Right.
Um, and so they have engaged conversations. And so they're incentivized to make more calls. So, yeah, anyways, it's been man, the last 6 months has been, yeah, it's been awesome. It's been super exciting.
Yeah, and again, the solution that you created, your app, the hot button terms, everybody talking about AI and building an app and having a SaaS, like this is something that you did. I don't want to say by accident, but you kind of created it by necessity for your own team, which validates it when people are gonna, when you bring this to market and tell people, hey, this is their solution and here's the results, and it's not a theory. It's facts, right? It's a true data of what you guys have from A to B, using it, not using it. Tell me a little bit about what your guys' timeline looks like. When are you bringing this out? When can people, get their hands on stuff like this?
Yeah, so we basically created this app and integrated it with OpenAI,
Hmm.
and then we uploaded over 10,000 hours of training content and into like the memories, and then we uploaded all of our testing rubrics and our frameworks so that when it digests the phone calls and when it digests the in-person meetings, it pumps out the appropriate stuff to help a sales leader or an agent or even transaction coordinators. It pumps out exactly what each one of these people need to move the ball down the field. So yeah, I mean, we built all this out internally for ourselves. And it was out of, like you said, it was out of necessity. I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but the last 2.5 years for us has probably been more difficult than like 2008 and 2009. Uh, it's like, the number of transactions that are closing in the US is at a 30-year low.
Yep.
Like, our conversion rates have been just horrible. Like, this is my 20th year doing this, and I've never seen conversion rates this low. And I think the National Association of Realtors published some study last year that said Google PPC is performing at it's like 0.45 to 0.65% is what the
Mm.
study says on average. So you have to generate almost 200 leads to get one deal. That's what the study said. And so like our profits were just horrible, like absolutely dreadful. And so we were like, man, like we have to find a way to increase conversion rates. And we have all these like reporting dashboards and stuff, but like those, like when you see those reporting dashboards, it's too late. You know what I mean? You've already spent 3 months on lead generation to find out these leads suck. So we need a faster feedback loop. And then, like I mentioned earlier, as we've helped teams across the US and Canada scale up, the sales lead becomes a bottleneck or the team owner becomes a bottleneck because they can't physically go out on listing appointments or buyer appointments and really help nurture their salespeople to make sure they're actually doing what you teach them. And so that was kind of another big epiphany is like there's this I want to be careful how I say this, but it's like kind of like an enforcement loop. If you're a team owner or a sales leader, you spend all this time training agents, right? Like, I mean, it's like you do freaking backflips for them. But how do you inspect what you expect in the field? And so we were looking under every rock to try to figure out like how do we fix the conversion rates? And man, we looked under that rock and it was just the things we have learned
Yeah.
is absolutely mind-boggling. And it's helped us in so many ways. I mean, so many ways. It's bumped conversion, it's doubled revenue, it's identified what lead sources work and what don't. So anyways, we created the app, and then we basically partnered with this company called RealSync, which is a integration platform. And they took everything we had created kind of as like this MVP for our team, and they kind of built like a, call it, enterprise level solution. Like it's like, anybody can go download it now on the App Store. And it's called TableOS. And I think there's a website, TableOS.ai. Yeah, TableOS.ai. So basically, I've started telling a lot of the people kind of in our group about it, and they've been the test dummies for the past like 3 months. Have been the
Yeah.
test dummies, and now it's like, man, it's pretty amazing. It's ready for prime time. And the Table OS app, again, download it. The agents download it on their phone, and the team owners get the integrations to the CRM and the transaction management system. They get all the business intelligence reporting, so like all the KPI dashboards, and those are all updated real time. The gamification, your agency of like how they're doing compared to other people, lead source ROI reporting, and then it's digesting all of the conversational intelligence around the phone calls and the appointments, and it's creating this closed loop, and it's helping you make decisions much faster to run your business so you don't waste money on leads. You know which agents need more training, you know which agents aren't doing what you're telling them to do in training, you know which ones are saying the wrong things on the phone, and you know what specifically to tell them to fix. So anyways, yeah, anybody listening can go to tableos.ai and download it now. It's not a huge team, so I don't know how many people listen to your show, but like they probably couldn't even onboard that many people, because it takes a long time to get this set up.
Yeah.
Like you have multiple calls with the agents, like you got to get them to download the app. You got to get the agents to understand why this is so valuable.
Have to have a buy-in. Yeah.
Yeah, so like agent adoption is a challenge, and so we use a lead privileges addendum to the position agreement.
Hmm.
And what we tell agents is like, if you want leads, like you need to record these sessions, because one, it helps us understand where to spend money on leads. Two, it helps us understand how to help you be better, and three, it also helps the rest of the team, because those notes go to the transaction coordinator. Because when the deal's won, there's always an outstanding list of things to do.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that lead privileges addendum has been kind of our gateway to improve agent adoption. And then the other challenge is like consent. And in some states, you have to have two parties consent. In Texas, we don't have to have that. But what's interesting is, for 6 months now, we were asking the agent, like, does the seller care? And most of the sellers, they said, were actually excited. They were
Yeah.
like, oh, that's cool. You're using an AI note taker, and they might, and the seller, I've literally seen these transcripts. Some of the sellers like, "Oh my god, I use ChatGPT. It's amazing."
Yeah.
Uh, so anyways, I think anybody spending money on leads and training agents, if they're not getting the conversational intelligence on the phone, and most importantly in person, and getting that feedback loop to ensure that the agent is doing what you're training them on, you're leaving, just the amount of money you're leaving on the table is mind-boggling.
A lot. Yeah. And I think this tool, I think TableOS AI I think the tool is great for people that are spending like a lot of money to continually pump leads to their team. There's groups out there. If you're doing one or two appointments a month, maybe this isn't for you. This isn't really for you, right? There's stuff that you can do that you can try to figure that out on your own. But like you said, again, the reason I got so excited when I talked to you about this program is because it helps validate the lead sources that we're helping manage for our clients. And then instead of us saying, I talked to you before we did this interview. I hate talking about feelings. I feel like this, I feel like that. This is data. This is facts. This is purely showing you what the best lead source is, what the best solution for that is. And then even diving down deeper into what ads work better than others. You're able to track all of that with this. People that are running lead generation, spending 10, 20, 30, $40,000 a month in lead generation, this will tell you if the juice is worth the squeeze. That's what really gets me excited about being able to see some of our teams implement this in the future, and then see what the value brings. it should be pretty instant, right? It should be, like you said, instead of waiting 90 days, you're going to be able to see within 30 days what that looks like and is it good?
Yeah, it's not even 30 days, like, in, like, literally a week's time, the things you learn like, I was I was meeting with my sales lead yesterday because a couple of our agents, their face-to-face conversion was down. Like, they were
Mm.
going on appointments, but they weren't converting. And so, we were like, "Why?" And so we go and look at the logs from the app's recording of the appointments, and what the rubrics told us, these are like the scorecards. What they told us is like the agents didn't even push for a close. They said like you see a quote from the transcript that shows up on the rubric, and the agent just says, "Well, call me and let me know when you guys are ready to list your home." And what's so frustrating about that is at the beginning of the transcript, the seller said, "We need to have our house sold by March 31st." And today is February 24th. So like they needed their house on the market yesterday. Like the agent had this like super highly motivated person in front of them,
Right.
and they just said, "Call me when you guys are ready." Like they didn't push and tell them like, "Hey, like we can't afford to wait. Like we need to move forward today. Like literally your house needs to be on the market this weekend and we need to try to get offers by next week if you want to close by the end of next month."
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, and then God, like the things I've learned, I had one agent show up to an appointment and did not do a CMA. Like you hear in the call, you hear on the trend, you hear in the report card, because that's one of the sections in the report card is about pricing.
Yep.
And so we require that the agent does what's called a market absorption report, a CMA, and a net proceeds estimate. They didn't do any of those. And so on the rubric, they got a fat zero for that component and they failed.
Yeah.
They failed. Their skill was like, like in the 60s. What's crazy is she got the freaking listing signed. But here's what's more frustrating about that is I pay for my agents to like have the sign delivered. I pay to put in the MLS. I pay for the photos. My agents don't pay for those things. And so I'm in my head, I'm like, dude, we're going to go spend $2,000 to get this listing active. And we're taking this listing on way overpriced and it's not going to sell.
With no CMA.
She did no CMA, no net proceeds estimate, no market absorption report. Like, and you hear her, you hear her say, there's no comps out here. That's what she said. I'm like, I don't care if there are no comps. You better go find one because you
Yeah.
get a buyer and they get a loan. That appraiser is going to find their
They'll
comps,
find it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Wow.
man. And it's God, it's so frustrating, but also I know like it's such an opportunity.
That's a great training tool, right? It's a learning opportunity, or it could be not just a learning opportunity, but it could start to filter out. Maybe this agent isn't a good fit for my agency because of the fact that they refuse to follow the guidelines of which you set in place. And I think it's good for you and good for the agent to, if they're not a good fit and they shouldn't be there, then it's okay to remove. Like at the end of the day, you're the business owner and money comes out of your pocket before it comes out of anybody else's. But again, that's why I love the tool and and this idea. Going kind of wrapping this up, so to speak. Going to TableOS.ai, going and looking at, you got some videos on there. It's ready for some. There's a way to reach out to that? Who's doing the sales side of that? How does somebody get in touch
Yeah.
with the sales side of that?
Yeah. So, it's like they don't have the infrastructure in place to onboard a ton of groups, like, you know, and it's super labor intensive to get this set up. They have two full-time employees that all they do is set this up for you.
Okay.
So they integrate it to the CRM for you. They integrate to your transaction management system. They get all the dashboards and KPI reportings and agent conversion and all that stuff set up. They do a call with your agents to just essentially sell the benefits of this, so they'll hit the dang record button.
Yeah.
And so Amanda, her name's Amanda, she's the one that helps with like implementation, and Scott is the one that kind of helps with onboarding and getting you going, if you will. Yeah, so if they go to TableOS.ai, they will schedule a time, they'll get on the calendar with Scott, and then Amanda and her team are the ones that actually like set this up. And yeah, we've been this is like, anybody listening to this show, there's nothing out there like this. I wish there was. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gone and tried to figure out how to create this.
Right.
But it's man, I didn't even mention this, but, like, my one of the in the book I mentioned earlier, like, a buyer agent team lead or a listing agent team lead, if you read Gary Keller's book, like, you can't oversee very many people and do it and to be effective because it's so time consuming to listen to calls and do ride-alongs. And I'm so excited about the next year because I think our sales leads can now oversee probably 2 to 3 times more agents and be more effective at leading them because they know what's going on in the trenches and they can inspect what they expect. So, man, it's yeah, the AI stuff, like the power of AI now is just it's mind-boggling,
Yeah.
what's possible.
Used right, it's extremely effective and makes you more efficient. I love it. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. I think this is the first time Chris and I have done one of these. I doubt it's the last, and I'm guessing it'll be multiples as we follow this journey. And then I think honestly, just talking industry stuff with you, you've got such a broad background of being on both sides of that fence of being in some tech stuff and then also running a team, building a team, and then, trying to learn how to operate. You're doing a lot in lead generations. Full disclosure, Chris is not one of my clients. Just kind of came to me and we started chopping it up and we run into the same problems. He sees the same issues I see inside industry stuff. So I really enjoy conversations with you because it does, seeing what your experiences are and what we have for experiences at Driven Leads. I think again, this might end up being a could be a monthly call where we're just talking and being frank about what we're seeing and industry stuff and what you guys are experiencing with your solutions and with your tools. But I appreciate you coming in. We will be talking soon again. We'll make sure we get this out to people. But thanks for jumping on today, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm excited for you to your next client that calls and says, "I'm gonna cancel Driven Leads." I'm excited for you to tell them before you cancel, go get the insights on what your agents are saying in the field
Yeah,
because you might be canceling the most profitable lead gen mechanism you have. And so I can't wait to hear how it helps
yeah,
improve any of your customers that are spending money on lead gen.
sure, for sure. All right, man. Well, you again, thanks for coming
Yeah,
and
yeah. I'll put a link for the book if anybody wants a copy, and I
perfect.
can see, I have a PDF version. If they want the free one, I can physically send this also. Just pay I think the shipping costs like 5, $6, something like that. I'll send you the link for people that wanna get the physical copy.
Sounds awesome. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you soon for sure.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thanks for having
Chris.
me on.